It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. It's data. My God, folks, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah, I think we're still in the middle of it. We can argue when the thing's going to end. But the bottom line is we got to start looking at some data because the data is screaming. It is screaming. The alarm bells are going off. Wes McCarter, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Ray. We're just baking down in Arizona.
Well, you know, I saw it was like 117 degrees there one day. The paint was melting off signs on the road or something. Crazy stuff. I'm in St. Louis. It's not that bad here. Wes, I got to be honest with you. I want to ask you a question right out of the gate here. When I was with you for those 10 months and we were looking at how to take your data and really help dealers deliver with no meter, we were using science and, helping formulate that program. We also put together these executive summaries that we would send dealer owners once a month. And it was basically dashboards of the data digested so they could just look at it, make them scream, and go ask questions. So I want to ask you, this is almost 2 years later, are people looking at those dashboards?
Not generally. A few of the engaged owners use that as a guidepost for holding their teams accountable to goals and expectations that they set for changing the organizational processes, but the vast majority of them don't even look at it.
Well, that's sad. Folks, we're in a pandemic. Look at the data. It's all there. It drives me out of my mind. Wes, when I was with you, there was a number that you could tell a dealer. He could look at his dashboard, and that number would say, look, Mr. Dealer or Mrs. Dealer, if you did what we told you to do, 100% of what we told you to do, based on real data, we could save your dealership X amount of dollars per month. What is that number total today for your whole entire population of dealers?
So for the entire population, it's about $54 million a month. Now, the caveat there is that 100% of that number is not attainable because the way we do that is we compare the dealer's average cost per page against the national average cost per page and assume that if you could get to average, you could lower your cost that much. What the driving factor there is that a lot of that excessive cost is relative to machines being placed in volume environments that they don't run well. So their cost is high relative to volume, not because of poor performance or some other thing that they could fix. So unless they could get the customer to run more volume, they can't really fix it. But let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that 20 or 25% of that number is realistic because of efficiencies, whether that's callback hold for parts, and other things that are going on. 25% of $54 million is a significant amount of money each month.
It's a boatload of money. I mean, we got dealerships right now that are, we're in unprecedented times. We have to cut costs. Human capital costs were cut. People are in pain. This is a terrible situation. But if we don't look at this data to really understand how can we grab some more of these dollars, and we're arbitrarily just cutting things that might not need to be cut, it's a little bit disturbing. I know I'm a little passionate about these numbers because here's an example, Wes. I saw a survey that was done, and this survey was done without any malice. There was no reason to deceive anybody, but it didn't really have a basis of where the numbers came from. It said that about 28% of the dealers that were surveyed said their service activity was less than 50% pre-virus. Can you elaborate on that from your World Stats data? What does that really look like, and what are we down in service? Can you give us some insight there?
Well, in service call activity, that's not terribly far off.
Okay.
Back in January and February, we were averaging about 800 to 750,000 service calls a month through our customer base, through our database.
Okay.
That's down to 282,000 as of June. So
say that again. Wait a second. So in March, before the virus, we were at 700 and what?
50,000.
50,000 service calls, and now we're down to
282.
Wow. So that's a pretty good decrease in service activity.
Yeah, it's a scary decrease.
Can you talk about any of the volumes over that period of time? Have we seen any data on that?
Yeah, page volume has gone down fairly significantly as well. In February, we were doing well over 5 billion pages a month on average. In June, as of end of June, it was 2.5 billion. So well over 50% drop in page volume. Average monthly volume is following that trend, about 6,700 pages a month in February, March timeframe. It's down to 3,600 pages a month today. So obviously that decline is because offices are closed down, and a lot of the A3 devices that were producing that volume have since not been used, and they're printing at home if they're printing at all.
Folks, I got to tell you, we know the volumes are down. We just saw Xerox, they were the first manufacturer to really publish their numbers. They did that yesterday. We saw their revenues were down about 37%. They kind of beat expectations on their earnings miraculously, but they had to do that through cuts, and they had to do that through efficiencies. And I'm not saying Xerox has all the damn answers, they do everything right, but I assure you they're looking at data. They have teams that are looking at data. And what do we do? Wes, what can we do if you're doing a dashboard, you're giving them executive summaries? What in the hell can we do to help the industry really dissect this data? What do we do, man?
Well, obviously, like everything, it's execution. It's recognizing what the data is telling you, then creating an action from that data. We know for a fact that dealers that coach and mentor and set goals and expectations do better than dealers that don't. Mm-hmm. So our whole Acuity program is designed around that aspect. One of the other areas that seems to get little attention is inventory. And the scary part of what's going on with inventory today is back in March and February, we were using about $36 million in parts every month.
Okay.
That's down to 12 today. So almost a 2/3 drop in parts, which you would expect because call volume has dropped, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is that our inventory structure and inventory chains were all set up assuming that our volume would continue, and the pandemic shut it down. So the risk is now a significant amount of inventory is going to move to obsolescence as a function of these customers no longer consuming those parts. And when we looked at our data, you go back and look at all of the value of the amount of parts sitting in inventory today that have not been used one time in 12 months or more. Right? So we can go out and say, we know that you haven't used it in 12 months or more, 18 months or more, etc. The numbers are staggering. Right now, there's $37 million worth of inventory that's in excess of what they would have normally used in 6 months. Wow. Normally used in 6 months. And we're no longer normal, right? So those parts are going to start, that number is going to accelerate. Parts that haven't been used in 18 months or more is almost $25 million.
And a lot of those parts had nothing to do with the pandemic.
Right. And that's going to get worse as a function of the pandemic. And it's because of the way we don't focus management of parts as a logistics function and go, how do we forecast and how do we get this inventory in just in time rather than stock $24 million worth of parts we aren't even going to use in 18 months. Mm-hmm.
Well, last week I had Ed McLaughlin on, and, we talked a little bit about the data. And one of the comments he made was, we got a lot of data out there, but damn it, if we don't look at it, it's just useless data. Or if we look at data that's what we call fake data, or data that's not based on a world environment like you have, and that's, say what you want. NextEra obviously supports the end of the day with Ray, but at the same time, they have the data, folks. And I just, Wes, let me ask you a question. Would you be willing to put like a Zoom meeting on for dealer owners only if we could figure out how to arrange that and make that happen, where you could come in and maybe look at some data holistically with them and try to guide them through that executive summary? I mean, you guys.
Absolutely. We do that with our customer base almost a weekly basis to start looking at what the changes need to be made and how can we make changes. Mm-hmm. We've even offered to groups like CDA and SDG and the ability to, how do we take inventory that we currently have that we'll never use and get that moved to somebody that needs it so they don't have to buy more inventory or buy inventory from the manufacturer, but actually buy it from each other to help mitigate some of this excessive parts inventory we have, as well as some of the obsolete inventory.
Are you getting any movement in that area? I mean, are they working with each other on that?
Not a lot of interest.
Okay, well, I think we just got to figure out what here's the reality, folks. We're trying to be in this reactive mode, and obviously we got serious fires to put out. But you know what? If the fire truck has a blocked hose, the first thing we got to do is fix that damn hose unless another truck's coming. But if another truck's not coming, we got to fix the damn hose. And right now our hose is clogged and it's clogged and it's clogged, and we're not fixing it. It's scary to me. Let's see if we can't put a Zoom together and it gets some attention with our dealer friends, because at the end of the day, if they don't look at data, they're not going to fix it. They don't know what the data says to help them fix it. We're going to have a disaster. Is there anything you want to add before we end?
We'd love the opportunity to help, as we've done with all of our customers. The goal is to help them get through this pandemic and come out the other side a leaner, meaner, more profitable service organization.
Well, I agree with you. And the data is not just about fixing all the problems. That's a big part of it. The data is also about allowing you to see what's going on in the environment of the world. Who's buying what machines are better serviced than the others. I mean, there's a lot of data that can help you not just fix things, but plan things as well. My friends, well, there you go, buddy. Hey, my friends, I'm going to end this the way I always do. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo. We'll see y'all later.